because some people believed that COVID-19 played a huge role in the election results, and Trump would have won the election if there wasn't a pandemic. Some people believed that. In fact, by obtaining around 65 million votes, Trump has done a better job than any of the previous Republican candidates in the history. Do you think that it is because of the Trump's personality or his way of conducting politics? Because before and after the elections, there seemed to be a really huge polarization in American society and even in the world. What did the Trump era teach us about American politics? Can we say that America has divided into two big camps? And more importantly, when do you think that Trump conceded the election results?
You know, I'm have been saying for months I'm going to write a book about America after Trump, and I'm still trying to figure out the line on it because of that question that you've just raised. And that is, as we speak, and there's still a few more ballots to be counted, but Joe Biden has almost 80 million votes. We need to note that, but Donald Trump has 73 million. And this is in a context where I thought, because of coronavirus, I thought it would be extremely difficult for him to win because he's mishandled the pandemic. I mean, in point blank, coronavirus doesn't just kill Republicans or Democrats, it kills across the political spectrum. And the death toll is now not only more than 256,000, it's going back up, about 1,200, 1,400 Americans dying a day, and no sign of that stopping because of the mismanagement of the crisis. But despite the mismanagement of the pandemic, despite the mismanagement, therefore, of the economic consequences of the pandemic, despite the almost chaotic way in which he dealt with it, yeah, all these people voted for Trump, and you have to say why. And I think there's the general answer, which we start off with, which is America was polarized before Donald Trump. You know, that it has to do with the type of media in America, where you have a polarized media environment. So it moves from being discussion media to being attack media. It has to do with basically, since the 1990s, that the Republicans initially rejecting bipartisan approaches in Congress. This starting in 1994 with Newt Gingrich, who's still around and still being very damaging on media. That the idea of cooperation, which has sort of been, of course, the Republicans and the Democrats go after each other, but there still were ideas that both on domestic politics and foreign policy, you could find bipartisan areas where they agree. Well, that dissolved over a generation before Trump. But I think you have to go further, because I think it's too easy just to say it's a polarized media. What was it about Trump that exploited that polarization? Because I've got, both my parents are diehard Trump supporters in the state of Georgia, which was one of the key states in this election. Some of my relatives are diehard Trump supporters. Some of them are Republicans who've broken away from Trump. And the best way I can explain that to you, living through it almost daily in terms of discussing politics with them, is that Trump is a snake oil salesman. That what he did in 2016 was he came in with many people, you know, still having the effects of the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, saying, I can make it better for you. And I can make it better for you because I'll stand up to the Chinese, let's blame them. Or I'll stand up to immigrants, let's blame them. Or I'll stand up to other people of color, let's blame them. Or I'll stand up to the left, whatever the left is. And so it did two things. One is it told people, all right, things will get better if we put this guy in office. But secondly, if things don't get better, this guy's he's gonna take care of the people who've made things so bad. And 4 years later, I think the lesson is that even though things didn't get better for a lot of those people, and it haven't gotten better for America, indeed, these have been arguably the most destructive 4 years for America outside of wartime. Once you entrench yourself with a snake oil salesman, you get deeper and deeper in believing it's got to get better. It will get better. Now, the snake oil never works. And the snake oil salesman is never in it for you. He's only in it for himself. But you still want to believe. And so I think the importance of this for me is looking beyond Trump is you've got to recognize that simply going out and saying, we'll simply appeal to those people who voted for Joe Biden and we'll work with them to be constructive, that you can't do just that. You've got to reach out to those folks who voted for Trump and figure out, was it anger, fear, resentment? What is it that you can establish a line of dialogue with them? Because at the end of the day, Americans, whoever they voted for, have got an interest in decent housing. They've got an interest in decent education for their kids. They've got an interest in decent health care, especially right now in a pandemic, for their families. They've got an interest in having jobs. So you've got to reach out on those common interests to those folks and not use this us versus them type of politics with them. Even as you have to recognize that Donald Trump is not going to go away. His media supporters are not going to go away, and they're going to keep practicing division. That makes it doubly important that you reach out to folks who have supported him and say, it doesn't have to be this way.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, I was going to come to this question because you raised a really nice point here. As far as I understand, the Trump didn't polarize. It was already a polarized system before he elected. And basically, he just touched the feelings of many Americans. And he had some really nice, maybe catchy slogan saying that "Make America Great Again." And I think the Biden administration will face more difficulties at home than abroad. And I will be happy if you can elaborate on these questions with a specific reference to this Trumpism concept. I think you are just underlying this Trumpism concept, because some people also believe that Trump may lost the election, and you also said that Trumpism will exist.
So I guess let me take that in two parts. I guess let me start with the positive part first, which is, all right, there's a lot of folks who quite rightly say, all right, the Biden administration runs into difficulties immediately, because even if Donald Trump is dragged out of the White House on January 20th, you've got at best a 50-50 Senate, which means the Vice President, Kamala Harris, is the deciding vote. But that's at best. I mean, the Republicans could have a majority of up to 52-48, depending on how these two elections go in Georgia on January the 5th. Then you've got a Democratic majority in the House, which is diminished. They still have the majority, but it's been reduced. And so the idea of great sweeping legislation, think about Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first 100 days during the Depression. Think about the idea of John F. Kennedy's first 100 days with all those, both at home and abroad, big messages, big legislation. It is going to be difficult to say have a Green New Deal, that $3 trillion package that Biden and his advisors are talking about to link economic recovery with environmental protection. It's going to be difficult to vastly expand Obamacare immediately. It's going to be difficult to make major changes for immigration reform immediately. But that's only part of what you can do. See, the power of the executive lies in that a lot of what you can do does not depend upon Congress. And there's a very simple first step in this. The Biden administration from day one can try to get control of the pandemic. And indeed, that's what they've been signaling. I mean, the first meetings that Biden and Kamala Harris had after the Democratic National Convention in August was with medical and public health experts. And some of the first meetings they had after Biden was confirmed as president-elect have been with medical, public health, and technology experts. And so, and the executive, what we have seen is the lesson of the coronavirus pandemic has that the executive branch under Donald Trump has not coordinated with the states, has not worked with the states, has had no interest in doing so. And that's led to a great deal of destruction, damage, and death. Well, Biden and Harris can begin to reverse that. Biden and Harris can begin to work with people in terms of economic measures to limit the economic consequences. Even if Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, says no stimulus package, no stimulus package. The Biden administration can work on protecting environmental regulations, restoring some of the regulations that Donald Trump has gotten rid of. It can protect what we call the dreamers, those 700,000, they were children of undocumented immigrants that were protected under the Obama administration. Some of them are now in the armed forces. Some of them now have jobs. Some of them are at universities. Biden can issue an executive order which says they cannot be deported, which is what Trump was threatening to do. They can protect legal immigrants who have been threatened with restrictions on their public benefits. They can protect Obamacare by preventing further destruction of it. So in other words, you can take all these very practical steps within the executive without having to have new legislation. Why is that important? at the end of the day, on the one hand, you've got competence, responsibility, and effectiveness. Now, on the other hand, you've referred to Trumpism. But what is Trumpism? Trumpism isn't competence. It's not effectiveness. It's slogans. It's slogans. It's a type of rhetoric, a type of behavior, which is this type of divisive politics. Now, I think that's going to pose problems for the Republican Party, because the Republican Party, and I'm talking about people like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, they've enabled Trump for almost 4 years while he's been president. They protected him over the Trump-Russia scandal, where Trump did commit crimes and may be prosecuted for them on day one after he leaves office. They protected him over the Trump-Ukraine scandal, where Trump did commit crimes, but was protected. They protected him over a government shutdown, over a national emergency. They protected him over, I could go on and on. Do they protect Trump while he is outside of office and trying to run for president in 2024? Or do they say enough is enough? That's a huge question for them. But the bigger question is Trumpism versus the Biden administration. Look, one of the reasons why at the end of the day, Joe Biden is president of the United States, why it's his advisors who are in, and why there are many state and local leaders who have been reelected, is because they said, it's about what you do. It's about unity, and it's about protecting all Americans. If they maintain that line against Trumpism, that's the best answer to it. Will it stop a divided media? Will it stop the disinformation? No, but it provides an alternative to that type of division and disinformation that can last throughout a Biden administration. And then we see what happens in the next 4 years after that.